I knew I should have worn a flax jacket instead of linen when Jenna invited me to that executive brunch. By the third mimosa, she leaned across the rooftop table like a discount Bond villain, sunglasses crooked, and purred. "You're too dependable to lead, Marla. You'd make a great support system." The word support hit harder than the July sun baking the shrimp skewers. I smiled like someone who just realized the guillotine wasn't for decoration. Jenna laughed at her own brilliance, clinked her glass against mine, and went back to picking basil out of her teeth like nothing had detonated. Behind my polite nods and cucumber water composure, I was counting the number of interns I'd trained who now had better parking spots than I did. Jenna, the freshly minted coup via marriage, not merit, had the audacity to call me safe. Safe, like a Honda Civic, like unseasoned chicken, like a woman who hadn't worked unpaid overtime for 7 years building the exact systems her new title now put her in charge of breaking. By the way, since 97% of folks just listen to these stories and ghost us like a bad Tinder date, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, it keeps our petty little revenge fueled and makes the team feel like the chaos was worth it. Now back to your regularly scheduled betrayal. I didn't cry, didn't flinch, just let her finish her speech about fresh blood while stirring the melting ice in my mimosa. I'd heard that phrase before, usually right before a merger or firing, or when someone's about to hire their cousin with a minor in philosophy and a vape addiction. I raised my glass, toasted her success, and handed her my 2-week notice like it was a dinner mint. No speech, no tantrum, just a little smile and the quiet knowledge that she'd mistake my exit for surrender. Truth was, I'd already started packing, just not boxes. Documents, emails, screenshots of Slack messages where Jenna called our interns hot but hopeless HR memos she accidentally deleted. I wasn't leaving a job, I was peeling back the drywall on a termite nest. Her snub didn't hurt because it was unexpected. It hurt because it was exactly what I knew was coming. Jenna never saw me as a threat, just another life her in kitten heels with a color-coded Google Calendar and a drawer full of Tums. What she didn't realize was some of us don't scream when we're angry. We build exit strategies. I'd spent 7 years making executives look smart in boardrooms. I was the ghost in the spreadsheet, the reason campaigns launched on time, the person who made sure Jenna never had to explain what gross margin meant to a journalist. And now I was just another fixture she wanted to replace with someone who understands TikTok and calls every idea disruptive. Fine, let her underestimate me. That brunch ended like it began, with Jenna giggling and me nodding. But this time I was holding a mimosa in one hand and a printed resignation in the other. I set them both gently in front of her like offerings to a queen too dumb to notice the peasants were armed. Her laugh trailed off. She looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. "I wait what I'm done," I said. 2 weeks. "Marla," she said with a tilted head, "are you serious?" As a heart attack, I replied, rising from my chair, "Enjoy the shrimp, watch the basil." And with that, I left her blinking behind oversized sunglasses, wondering how the help just walked out mid-toast. I didn't look back because you never look back when you're lighting a fuse. You ever seen a woman clean her desk with the calm of someone building a guillotine? That was me Thursday morning, fluorescent lights humming overhead like a warning. Everyone thought I was winding down. Karen from marketing gave me a goodbye succulent. The VP of strategy asked if I'd circle back for knowledge transfer. I nodded and smiled like a Stepford intern, and went back to exporting selected files into a private Google Drive folder labeled vacation photos, because nothing says peace like 12 gigabytes of financial irregularities and off-books intern contracts. Let me be clear. I wasn't stealing. I was preserving. Preserving every late-night deck I ghost wrote for executives who couldn't spell synergy. Preserving the time-stamped edits on our annual report. Ones that made our COO's cost-cutting initiative look less like budgeting and more like laundering. I didn't take everything, just the parts I built, the parts she buried, the parts that proved I wasn't just support. I was the scaffolding holding up a very expensive lie, and then I called Claire. Claire Brenner, former roommate, karaoke assassin, now a divorce attorney who wore red nail polish like war paint and built-in half-hour units. Last time we spoke, she just won a case where the mistress got the dog but the wife got the Porsche. She picked up on the second ring. Well, if it isn't the queen of lost causes. "I have a situation," I said. "It involves marriage, misconduct, and mimosas." Claire didn't even pause. "Tell me everything." While Claire prepped her legal blades, I began what I called the inventory. Not of my desk drawers, that was just gums, stress snacks, and a retirement card someone wrote "Good luck on your next adventure," and like I was going to summer camp. No, this inventory was names, dates, passwords I still had access to, conversations I remembered word for word, and I scheduled exit interviews. Not with my manager, no. I went to HR, finance, compliance, the holy trinity of corporate whispers, sat down with my nicest blouse, my calmest voice, and said things like, I just want to share some feedback before I go. They nodded, took notes, didn't realize also taking theirs. Because if you listen carefully, if you really listen, people will hand you their dirt with a smile. One compliance analyst, bless her caffeinated soul, even leaned in and whispered, "It's been weird since Jenna got promoted, right?" I said, sipping chamomile. So weird. And then came the call. My phone had a contact saved under Julie's vet. No one ever questioned it. Julie was my imaginary cat. The vet? Jenna's husband, Dylan. He and I had history, not that kind, but enough. Last year, during a PR crisis, he was the only exec who treated me like I wasn't a chair with Wi-Fi. I saved his number just in case. No words were exchanged, just a ringtone, then silence. I knew he'd recognize the number. He picked up. I didn't speak. Neither did he, but the silence stretched just long enough to mean something. Then I hung up, controlled resolve. That's what they'd call it if this was a Netflix thriller. Rage under glass. What it felt like was holding your breath while someone else walks toward the tripwire. Jenna thought she'd humiliated me over Eggs Benedict. She had no idea she was eating her last meal in a house I built and just quietly rigged for demolition. I wasn't done. I was just beginning the exit strategy. They booked the lunch in the glass conference room, the one with the fake fern, fingerprint-smudged walls, and that awkward view of the loading dock. Jenna stood dead center like a game show host, all teeth and tension, wearing a lavender blazer that probably cost more than my first car. The farewell cake read "Good luck, Marla" in grocery store frosting, and they even spelled my name right this time, which almost felt insulting. Like after 7 years, all I got was accurate spelling and half-melted buttercream. The junior VPs lined up to take turns saying things they'd clearly Googled 5 minutes before. "You were really great at explaining stuff, Marla." She taught me how to use the CRM, twice. She always had gum. They spoke about me like I was already dead, a harmless ghost in slacks who brought snacks to quarterly meetings and left spreadsheets color-coded like Easter eggs. No mention of the client I saved from suing us. No mention of the campaign I rebuilt in 72 hours after Jenna's vision board tanked it. Just empty platitudes from men who'd be fired by year's end and women who'd memorized the art of smiling through male mediocrity. Jenna took the mic, or rather the floor, because God forbid she share the spotlight with any tool but her own voice. "Marla has been such a dependable part of this company," she said, dragging out dependable like it was synonymous with forgettable. "She's the kind of person you can always count on, like Post-it notes or decaf." Everyone fake laughed. I sipped water and imagined replacing her collagen saran with Gorilla Glue. She handed me a white envelope, cheap cardstock, no company logo. Inside, a $50 gift card to Olive Garden, not even a handwritten note, just the receipt. "Don't be a stranger," she added with a wink. I looked at her and thought, "You don't even realize you're already alone." I stood, thanked everyone, smiled like I just swallowed glass, said all the things you're supposed to say so no one checks your bag on the way out. And then in the elevator alone, finally, I pulled out my phone and recorded a short voicemail to myself, not for posterity, for evidence. 1 mimosa, 1 lie, and 1 deleted report. Timestamp this. See, while Jenna was busy handing me a gift card and a fake compliment, I was planting something in the system. 3 confidential triggers buried deep in the metadata of a project folder she accessed daily. Not malware, nothing illegal, just files labeled like normal reports. But if opened, they logged access times, IPs, and captured screen activity. Legal wouldn't care today, but in about 6 business days, when a board member opened their inbox to a whistleblower packet, they'd want timestamps. They'd want proof. They'd want to know who'd been covering up the phantom payrolls Jenna kept swiping under contractor disbursements. And those trigger files, oh, they'd sing. I walked out of that building not like someone saying goodbye, but like someone pressing detonate with their thumb hidden in their coat pocket. Everyone thought I was being gracious, mature, a professional. Had no idea the storm had already started. Last year, Dylan Price, the founder's golden boy and Jenna's very legal husband, was pacing our hallway like a man trying to outrun a subpoena. PR meltdown, investor threat. One of our influencers had posted a TikTok comparing our campaign to a Ponzi scheme with fonts. Jenna was conveniently off-grid at women's leadership retreat in Sedona, read ayahuasca and filtered selfies. Dylan panicked. Everyone else bailed. I stayed late with 2 Red Bulls and a spreadsheet that could have doubled as a manifesto. By sunrise, the investor was calm, the campaign salvaged, and Dylan started calling me the one who actually runs this place. He remembered that. So, when I texted him last Tuesday from a burner app, just 3 words, "Let's talk soon," he replied in under 10 place and nothing else. We met at a half-empty cafe on the east side, one of those places with baristas who write your name wrong on purpose to feel superior. I ordered peppermint tea. He got black coffee and looked like he hadn't slept since Easter. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again," he said, watching the street behind me more than my face. "You're going to want to see this." I slid a folder across the table like we were doing spy in a parking garage. Inside, printed screenshots, payment routing summaries, and a beautifully indexed chart I titled the Jenna Ledger. Not even sarcastically. It tracked everything. Stipends were routed through shadow vendors, wellness reimbursements paid to interns who never got onboarded, and bonus structures that looked more like hush money than merit pay. Dylan didn't say anything for a while. Then, Jesus. "Not quite," I said, "but I did major in accounting." He kept flipping, page after page, each one pulling a thread off his carefully ironed marriage. "How long have you had this?" "A while." "And you're giving it to me now?" "Because I don't need revenge. I need leverage, and I think you do too." He looked up at me, no smirk, no suspicion, just something like resignation or maybe regret. "I'm going to make a call," he said. "You still trust Claire with my afterlife?" He nodded. "She's my attorney now, simple as that." One phrase, and suddenly Jenna's firewall had a crack the size of a trust fund. We didn't hug, we didn't toast. Just 2 people in button-downs sipping caffeine and trading chess pieces. Meanwhile, back at Ariston HQ, the smallest cracks had started to show. Jenna's Outlook calendar refused to sync. Her usual priority threads weren't populating. A deck sheet emailed the board came back corrupted, replaced by an older draft with all her redline notes exposed. It was subtle, enough to chalk up to tech issues, but not so subtle she didn't feel it. She started CCing herself on everything, repeating tasks, snapping at it. At one point, she even called the help desk and said, "It feels like the system's turning on me." I bet it did, because it was. I hadn't hacked anything. I didn't need to. All I did was activate a little network I'd built over the years. Assistants, developers, admins who owed me favors or just hated Jenna. Enough to press the wrong button when asked. Someone swapped out her draft folder with a decoy. Someone accidentally unsynced her Slack history. Someone flagged her Zoom link as phishing and sent her to voicemail during a partner call. She thought she was being targeted by ghosts in the machine. She wasn't wrong. Just not the kind she expected. The Monday after I left felt like waking up after a thunderstorm you slept through. Quiet, humid, and charged. I made myself a French press, fed my non-existent cat for cover, and pulled my phone out like I was checking the weather, not waiting for the first breach in the dam. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even curious. I was ready in that deeply specific way only a woman who's been underestimated for 7 years can be. It's not vengeance if it's methodical, it's closure with attachments. And right on cue, it began. Sometime between 9:11 and 9:13 a.m. HR flagged a new submission in their anonymous reporting portal. It was titled Coup Misconduct Urgent and included 7 PDFs, 1 zip file, and a screen recording that began with Jenna saying, and I quote, "Don't forward that to finance. They'll just ask questions." It was the exact screen capture triggered when she opened that decoy folder the day of my goodbye lunch. The access log matched her IP, the voice crystal clear, the timestamp well within her working hours. HR forwarded it to the board with the usual corporate throat clearing. Received this morning. Appears serious. May merit internal review. One board member, a man who never remembered my name but once complimented my fiscally responsible handwriting, replied simply, "Review immediately." And just like that, the fuse I lit with a mimosa and a smile finally hit the powder. Jenna, meanwhile, must have thought she'd dodged a bullet. She came in that day wearing white. Actual white. Like some sort of purity cosplay. And told the front desk she was ready to refocus now that the distraction's gone. She gave someone a thumbs up in the elevator. Probably thought the weird glitches last week were just some Gen Z intern's incompetence. She had no clue she was already in free fall. She didn't notice legal was CCing each other more than usual. Didn't notice the head of compliance skipped their 10 a.m. stand-up. Didn't even flinch when her email permissions started acting weird again. But she did notice when Dylan walked in through the front door. No security badge, no smile, just a stiff jaw and a manila envelope in his hand. He walked straight past reception, ignored the coworker who tried to say good morning, and entered HR without knocking. Cameras caught the whole thing. His hand gripping the file like it was a weapon, the way he closed the door without a sound. Inside that envelope, a certified statement from his new legal rep, Claire Brenner, a formal notice of divorce, and a summary of alleged financial mismanagement supported by internal documents, ones Marla Raines had come across during her tenure and in good faith passed along to him. The head of HR asked if he wanted to sit down. He didn't. "I just wanted to deliver this myself," he said. "You'll want to look into it thoroughly." He left as quietly as he came, and yet by noon the building buzzed like a hornet's nest dipped in gasoline. Jenna tried to act calm. She asked for kombucha, asked why legal was locked in a meeting without her, asked if it was doing another random sweep. Nobody answered. Back in my apartment, I refreshed the news. Nothing yet, too early. I smiled and added oat milk to my coffee. Storms here, let it rain. Jenna found out the way all powerful people fear secondhand. Her assistant, poor sweat-stained Marcy, knocked on her door mid-Tuesday with that look. The one interns get before they tell you your mic was hot during a Zoom call where you called your vendors a charity case with fonts. Jenna? Just wanted to flag something." Marcy held out a printed email. That alone should have tipped Jenna off it was nuclear. At the top, RE, legal separation notice. D. Price, the 5th J. Price. The signature, Claire Brenner, Esquire. Jenna's hand shook as she scanned it. Her face blanched halfway down the page. She didn't scream, she didn't throw the paper. She simply stood up slow as syrup in January and said, "This is a joke, right?" Marcy shook her head, then made herself scarce like she'd seen this episode before and didn't like the ending. Jenna stormed to HR, demanded answers, demanded to know who let this happen. When they asked what she meant, she slapped the notice on their desk like a dead fish. "He's using Brenner and Wallace. I blackballed them from this company years ago." "That's odd," said the director of HR, barely glancing up. "They've had a compliance sub-office here for 3 weeks. 5th floor." Jenna blinked. "What? You approved the lease?" She hadn't, or she thought she hadn't. But the system said otherwise, e-signature, timestamp, even the internal memo she supposedly sent. All legit, except she'd never seen them. She spiraled fast. That afternoon, she accused 3 department heads of coordinating against her. She called IT into her office and asked if anyone had access to her files while she was meditating. Yes, she used that word, meditating. At her desk with Spotify set to power focus and a lavender candle that smelled like wet drywall. By 3 p.m., she'd had her calendar wiped accidentally, been locked out of the expense system due to compliance realignment, and cherry on top, discovered a file on her own desktop labeled M&M Legacy Access. She clicked it. Inside, 3 subfolders, one labeled Onboarding, one labeled Conflict History, and one called Red Flags. All of them bore her digital signature. All of them last edited 4 days after Marla left. That was impossible. Except it wasn't. System didn't lie. The timestamps lined up. The metadata pointed to her credentials, to her laptop, to her. She called IT. They ran diagnostics, found no malware, no breaches. Could be user error, one tech said, clearly not realizing she was one user error away from strangling someone with a USB cord. "No one accesses my files," Jenna hissed, "not without me knowing." The tech glanced at the folder again. Well, someone did. For the rest of the day, Jenna roamed the office like a ghost with Wi-Fi, cold, glitchy, and glitching harder by the hour. She paced the halls like they were shrinking. Doors stayed closed as she walked past, conversations hushed. She barked orders and nobody barked back. Her power didn't collapse all at once. It frayed quietly, one cord at a time, and every tug revealed how little she'd built herself. Meanwhile, upstairs on the 5th floor, Claire's new office door remained closed, but the lights were on. The first lockout hit at 8:12 a.m. sharp. Jenna opened her laptop, clicked into the finance portal to approve her weekly bonus release. Yes, weekly. Because nothing says leadership like compensating yourself every Friday, and got the red screen of death. Access denied. She tried again. Same result. She refreshed, restarted, smashed her mouse like it owed her money. Then she called IT. Put on the voice. Tight smile, tight tone. "Hi, says I don't have permissions to access the finance directory." A pause. Then the tech said, "Yeah, that's correct." "Excuse me." Access was revoked by the audit team. Standard procedure per board directive. What audit team? They said you'd know. She hung up, dialed Dylan. Voicemail, of course, because at that very moment, Dylan was across the city in a glass-walled office, seated next to Claire Brenner laying out a multi-tabbed spreadsheet labeled Executive Irregularities J. Price. The source compiled, confirmed, and watermarked by 1M Rains. Every dollar unaccounted for. Every fake intern. Every boutique wellness vendor that billed $11K for energy cleansing and turned out to be the side hustle of a CrossFit trainer Jenna was definitely not just networking with. Claire spoke calmly as Dylan nodded. There's an entire payroll substructure built under your CO's login, Dylan, but the signatures don't match. We're talking ghost accounts, falsified contractor invoices, and an intern program that ran under a completely different LLC owned, coincidentally, by your wife's yoga instructor. Dylan didn't react. He just signed the declaration of disclosure and asked what time the board meeting was. Back at Ariston, Jenna stormed into the executive boardroom with the fury of a sinkhole in stilettos. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded. 9 board members. One long silence. The chairman cleared his throat. "An internal audit has been initiated." "For what?" "Accounting concerns, compliance, digital access trails, expense anomalies." "Who initiated it?" "Dylan Price." Her voice cracked. "My husband, your co-founder," he corrected. She laughed. Actually laughed too loud, too long. Then she slapped the table with an open palm and shouted, "This is a damn witch hunt. You're all just jealous because I cleaned house and none of you had the balls to fire deadweight." One woman flinched. One man took notes. Someone whispered, "We're recording this." Jenna froze. Her face flushed from throat to cheekbone. She stood in silence for a full 6 seconds, then hissed, "You don't know what I've done for this place." The chairman replied, "We're about to find out." That afternoon, more doors slammed metaphorically than physically. Jenna's Slack admin rights revoked. Her expense card frozen. Her executive assistant mysteriously out sick for the week. Meanwhile, Claire's paralegal, wearing the world's calmest blazer, began sending HR packets titled Witness Statement Submitted Anonymously. Each one described the same pattern: erratic leadership, verbal abuse, expense manipulation, untraceable interns, and mysteriously vanishing compliance emails. Some were written in neutral corporate speak. Others were raw, typed like someone finally exhaled after years underwater. A few even included screenshots. HR read them all. So did legal. So did the board. Jenna thought she was the apex predator in a glass tower. She didn't realize she was the only one left with her name on the lease and a trail of breadcrumbs dipped in gasoline. I watched it unfold like a fireworks show I didn't buy a ticket for but somehow got front row seats. My new apartment sat 5 stories above a quiet coffee shop and didn't smell like burned ambition. No more beige cubicles. No more badge swipes at 7:58 a.m. So I wouldn't get dinged for being tardy. Just a view, a cat I finally actually adopted, and a job offer from a competitor Jenna once called a branding farm for has-beens. Funny how those has-beens gave me a signing bonus with more zeros than my last 2 years combined. The call from Claire came right as I was setting up my new Wi-Fi. "It's done," she said. "Board has everything, awaited word." In this case, everything meant 3 notarized whistleblower statements from current Ariston staff, full access logs showing Jenna logging into dormant payroll portals at 1:17 a.m., screenshots of unauthorized bonus approvals disguised as vendor corrections, and the cherry on top, a flagged email chain between Jenna and a shell account registered to her branding consultant, which, surprise, was the CrossFit intern with a burner Gmail address. And an Etsy page selling crystal deodorant. Claire had walked into the boardroom like a litigation Valkyrie and handed over a sleek black envelope with tabs, indexes, and color-coded annotations. Jenna had no idea how professional Quiet Rage could look in hardcover. The board didn't say much. They didn't need to. That same evening, Jenna received a formal notice. Administrative leave pending investigation. Effective immediately, no access, no communications, return all equipment by 5 p.m. She trashed her office in under 12 minutes. Her word as she screamed at a ficus, kicked over a framed Woman of the Year plaque, told her reflection in the lobby mirror, "You'll regret this." No one asked her who you was. Dylan had already moved out quietly, like a man leaving the scene of a controlled burn. No fight, no bags thrown on the lawn, just a neatly folded pile of paperwork on their kitchen counter labeled Revised Asset Division Proposal and a note taped to the wine fridge. "It's all yours now." By Friday, the leaks hit the trades. The business blogs loved it. Coup on leave amid scandal. Financial inquiry founders divorce attorney investigating spouse's company from strategy to subpoena. Ariston implodes from inside. I read them all with a croissant in one hand and a smug little grin on my face. Not because I wanted her destroyed. Not really, I just wanted to be believed, seen, taken seriously by the machine I spent years oiling while someone else wore the crown. Bittersweet doesn't begin to cover it. Justice is rarely clean. It's jagged, quiet, and shows up 2 weeks late in a PDF attachment. Jenna thought I'd vanish, that I'd resign and rot in irrelevance. Instead, I became the ghost in her hard drive. And now she was the one being erased. The glass door still bore her fingerprints when she walked in, though this time there was no badge swipe, no assistant at her side, no morning latte with collagen powder. Just Jenna wearing last week's blazer and a grim little smile stitched across her jaw like she'd practiced it in the rearview mirror. The lobby had changed. Subtle, but deliberate. The flowers were gone. The reception desk had a new face behind it. Someone she didn't recognize. And the TV, usually broadcasting market trends, now displayed a simple message in sans serif font. Welcome to a new era of compliance and risk strategy. Then she saw it, right beneath the logo. Freshly affixed to the door of what used to be her personal meeting room was a brushed steel plaque. Compliance and Risk Strategy C. Brenner asked. She stopped walking, breath hitched, and for the first time in years, Jenna Price, the self-appointed architect of Ariston's future, felt the full-body blow of irrelevance. Claire Brenner looked up from the HR table like she'd been expecting her. "Jenna," she said, not unkindly. Jenna stood there like she'd been shot, eyes glassy, lips parted, skin drained of that performative bronze she kept up with weekly appointments and good lighting. She didn't say a word, just dropped her purse, collapsed into the nearest chair like a marionette whose strings had finally snapped. Claire folded her hands calmly and tilted her head, eyes sharp but unreadable. "Would you like to discuss your exit strategy?" HR didn't even flinch. The cameras were already rolling. Jenna didn't answer, couldn't. Her throat worked around some invisible lump. Her nails dug crescent moons into her own palms, and her gaze fell to the floor where her own reflection in the polished tile looked up at her like an accusation. Somewhere upstairs her name was being scrubbed from the shared drive, her permissions revoked, her title rescinded. Not with drama, but with precision. The same kind of surgical precision she thought she was known for. She hadn't lost the game, she was never playing it. She was the board, and someone had flipped it. Later that night, as the city dimmed behind a veil of fog and expensive silence, Jenna sat alone in what used to be her luxury condo, now half empty and echoing. Her phone buzzed once, just once. Voicemail, unknown number. She tapped it and heard my voice, calm, clear, final. "You were right. I wasn't executive material, I was something worse." Pause, strategic, click. No follow-up, no explanation, just silence. She sat there for a long time, phone in hand, breathing like each inhale was a confession, and every exhale a punishment. Because by the time she realized I wasn't gunning for her crown, it was already in my back pocket. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make in a broken system is to simply document everything and wait. This story is a reminder that dignity isn't silence, it's precision. Power built on shortcuts and ego never survives a methodical mind with receipts. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.